Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com, and this is episode 12 of Photo Critiques. And in Photo Critiques, people send me in a bunch of their photographs, and I critique each one, and I offer suggestions on how they can improve the shot, and hopefully, when I do that, it helps all of us improve our photography. And today, I'm really pleased to critique the work, and I know I'm going to probably mess up your name, I apologize, is Elenilson Segura. And I might just call you L throughout the thing. So I don't mean any disrespect when I mispronounce names. I'm just a real dork when it comes to pronouncing names. Before I start critiquing Elenilson's work, if you guys could do me a favor and subscribe to my videos on YouTube and like and share them, I would really appreciate it. Okay, Elenilson sent me in, I think, 9 shots. And this one here is a pretty cool shot. It has a nice leading line of the path. This is another one, I've mentioned this a couple times in the critiques. If it's possible to revisit this area at a different time of year, because right now everything is green. I mean, you got a little lighter green over here, but everything's pretty much the same color. And this would be a really awesome shot if it was shot in the fall and this path was covered with orange and yellow and red leaves. And there was some spotted orange, yellow, and red leaves up here. So if you could revisit this area in the fall and get that shot, it would be awesome. What you could do for this specific shot, though, hopefully you shot in RAW. Everyone's really has to shoot in RAW. And you take this in Lightroom and you could use the brush technique I talk about in, excuse me, I hit a button without knowing it. Anyways, use the brush technique I talk about in Lightroom. It's akin to dodging and burning. And maybe you could brighten up this rock ledge over here. And then you could darken some areas and just add some interest and some depth to the photo. So that's something you might want to consider doing. We go on to the next shot. Now I got to zoom out a little bit. To get these in email, many times you guys, I understand, have to shrink them down pretty small. It just makes it a little more difficult to demonstrate or to go over the critique. But that's fine. Just bear with me as I try to make them bigger and smaller. This shot I like too. It's got a nice leading line of this road, and it kind of leads off into the distance towards these mountains, which helps lead your eye through the photograph. Again, this is very flat lighting because it's obviously very overcast. So there's really just kind of a monotone of green. If you could revisit again the site with the sun behind you or a sunset. I don't know where the sun will set in this scene. Maybe it will set over here in the mountains. That would be pretty cool. Or if you could get the sun behind you, so all this is front lit, it would bring out some more detail and make some interest. Again, you could use the brush technique I talk about in my Lightroom videos, and you could brighten up some of these trees and darken some other ones and add some little interest to this grass area and over here, and that would help the shot too. Let me try to zoom in on this one a little bit. Okay, this is the Petrified Forest. The overall, a couple things I like about it is I love the color. The color is not overdone. It's just very nicely done, and the focus is very good. Stuff in the foregrounds in focus, stuff in the backgrounds in focus. Done really well. This goes back though to article I wrote on my website about. It's called Working the Scene, and when you come up to a scene, when you first look at it, you're going, this is the shot, and you take the shot, and then you tend to, at least I used to, I tend to go on to the next scene, or I walk down the path 400 yards, take another shot. Usually, I would say almost all the time, that first shot you take isn't the best shot in that's available to you. So what you do is you work it. So you take this shot, and it's okay, it's a nice shot, but you know what? We got this petrified tree that's laying on its side here. Maybe I could get over here to the right and use this as a leading line, and maybe it's leading off into something cool out in the background, or go on the other side and shoot this way. So you work the scene, and basically working the scene is you just take a bunch of shots from a bunch of different angles, a bunch of different focal lengths. You try different lenses. You maybe use some filters, and you just try it out, and just all of a sudden you'll put your eye to the viewfinder and you go, oh, this is much better. I like this shot. So that's working the scene. So this looks like it's a prime candidate to work the scene. Now this shot here I like a lot, but I'm going to tell you two versions. I like the shot. It's fine. A purist is going to tell Elenilson that there's two problems. One is that the sailboat's bullseye. That means it's right in the middle. You either want it in the upper third or in the lower third. The other thing is this blown out sun area here. Now you want to minimize blowouts, and typically if you take a picture of a sunset in the sun, right where the sun is going to be blown out. You can't avoid that, and that's expected. But in this case it's so big, so large, that a purist would say that this is not a good picture. Also, if you wanted to print this doesn't print well because there's no data there to print. You just have white paper. If there was a way, I don't know if it was possible to expose this to make this minimized. If there was a way where you could make this minimized and not make the clouds any darker, these sunbeams, a lot of people call them God beams, would have been more prominent in the shot. But like I said, this is a difficult scene to expose. I do like this glow on the water from the sun. It's a nice leading line to the boat. If you could have maybe used a shorter focal length, I don't know, let's say this was 35 millimeters. Maybe you could have used 17 and put the boat way up in here, further away with these lights, or the light. I don't know. I really don't know. But like I mentioned, I like the shot. A lot of people wouldn't like it, and I tried to explain why. This shot here now is kind of the opposite. We have these really, really dark areas, and a purist is going to tell you that you never want black clouds. And the reason being is there really are never any black clouds in nature. And you're going to say to yourself, I know right now everyone's sitting here watching this saying, yeah, there are. Well, there aren't. I bet if you go from this point on and you look at the clouds every day for the rest of your life, you'll never see a black cloud. You'll see dark gray, and you won't see black. So you want to try to avoid processing a photograph or exposing a photograph where the clouds are black. Again, though, this is a very difficult scene to expose. You have this black here, and then you have blown out areas here. So it's just a hard scene to expose. This shot I like a lot. Couple things that I would say that maybe you could improve it is, again, if you could revisit the site when the sun's at a different angle. Right now it looks like it's very overcast, so the light is very flat. Like there's some real nice color in these trees over here, but it doesn't stand out because the light's flat. If you could have got this shot with the sun behind you and this was front lit, these trees would have been glowing. Over here is very dark. If you to rescue this photo, or not to rescue it, it's a nice shot. It's a nice shot. This is like a postcard even. To add some interest to this photo, again, use that Lightroom brush technique I talk about in the Lightroom videos. Maybe you could have brightened up some of these trees over here, brightened up over in here a little bit. The other thing is again, work the scene. Generally speaking, this front foliage here, although it's nicely in focus, maybe you could minimize that or eliminate that. It's not bad though. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But you work the scene, and maybe you could have, because it's just green. Maybe you could have did something to add something more interesting up in the foreground here. The other thing is, as I look now, this might be because of the size of the shot. Let me zoom out a little bit. To get it through email, maybe it lost some resolution, but it looks blurry in the background here, like where these trees are. And these trees are the interest. I mean, obviously the mountain peaks are, but the secondary interest are these trees because of the color. So you want to try to maximize these trees as well as the mountains in the background. The sky is interesting too. The clouds are nice, But it's a nice shot though. This is, like I mentioned, this would be a very nice postcard if you were in the gift shop and you saw this photograph and you'd buy it. I'm sure you would. But if you wanted to get some ideas on how you can improve it, I would get there on a time when the sun is behind you, and I would um, focus. Maybe you could use a wider angle lens. I don't know what you use because the metadata in the files doesn't include your lenses or anything really. But if you used a wider angle lens, maybe something around like between 17, 18 millimeters. And I have articles on my website that talk about hyperfocal distance and how to focus a landscape. If you check those out, you could get this part in the front still in focus, and back here would be in focus too. So that's something to check out on my website about notes. I think it's called Notes on Hyperfocal Distance. I don't remember. It was less than a month ago. If you just search on my website hyperfocal, you'll find it. This shot here, let me zoom out a little bit, if possible. There we go. This is a nice shot. I like it. I like the processing, but I'm going to tell you what is going to be an issue with the purist again, me too, is this glow. When you sometimes process a photo into black and white, you tend to get a glow sometimes on things that are in the background, a vertical post, something like that, and it's maddening because it's hard to get rid of. It just appeared there, So we have this glow around the trees. Hopefully you could see it in the video, and this glow around the dome of the building. And you want to avoid any of that. I use Nik Silver Effects Pro 2, and if I overprocess, I'll get glows like this, exactly like this. I don't know if you use Nik software for this, and I don't think it's only Nik software that does it. I've processed photos with just Lightroom into black and white, and I've got this glow. So it's just slightly overprocessed is the best way to put it. So back down the processing again. I like it. I like the grain. I like the way you processed it though. Outside of that glow, if you could get rid of that glow, it would be 100% perfect. This shot here is another one. Again, I keep saying this. If you could revisit, the light is kind of flat. The trees and the foliage are just solid green. Get there in the fall of the year when there's color. Maybe there'd be more moss on these rocks that would be reddish, brown, brownish red. The other issue is the highlights in the waterfall are blown out. It just doesn't look right. You don't want to have the highlights blown out. This is a scene where you would expose for the highlights. And I have an article written very recently on my website. I'm sorry I keep referring to my website, on how to expose for the highlights. And really this scene begs for it. What happens if you have to really shoot in raw files? When you expose for the highlights, this waterfall and the rocks would have been exposed perfectly. All this foliage would have been really dark, almost looking like a silhouette. But because you shot in raw, with a program like Lightroom, the raw data retains all the detail in the shadows. And you would be able to tease all this detail out using Lightroom and make it look fine. It would be a well-balanced photograph. The trouble is when the highlights get blown out, there's no data anymore. So you can't use Lightroom or any program in the world to get any detail out of these blown out areas. So that's why I promote people to expose for the highlights. And that would, you could use programs like Lightroom and stuff, because the shadows hold the detail, or they hold the detail much better than the highlights. And you could be able to tease it out with Lightroom. The disadvantage of doing this, to tell you everything right up front, is you tend to get noise. The shadows tend to hold noise, so you get some noise. But with Lightroom, you could use the detail panel and you could eliminate the noise, or at least minimize the noise. So I'd rather have a slightly noisy picture in the shadows that's properly exposed all the way through than a shot that has blown out highlights and no noise. That's my thinking. You may be, other people might be different, but that's what I would suggest. This shot here I like too. Again, it's overcast, sunset. It's towards the end of the day. It could be sunrise, but I believe it's probably sunset. Um, a couple things. This is me, not necessarily like most, every photographer in the world. I don't like things in the foreground that aren't in focus. This is unavoidable the way it's shot. Maybe the camera is even sitting on this ledge or rock or whatever it is. So there's a blurry area here. I would work the scene. I would try to eliminate that. Also, we have this dark trees here. Not a lot of light, not a lot of detail in the shadows. In processing, if you could bring out a little more detail in the shadows and or use that brush technique I mentioned a zillion times to brighten this up a little bit, I think it would help the photograph. The color is a little flat because of the lighting. Maybe you could tweak up saturation just a little bit. That would help bring some more interest to the photograph. And but as I mentioned, it's a nice composition. It's another one though that if you work the scene, maybe you could come up with something a little more interesting. And if you in post-processing, if you could do something to bring some more interest into these dark areas, I think it would help. And I believe that's it. That's 9 shots, yep. And I really appreciate Elenilson Segura sending me in some of their beautiful shots. Elenilson, you definitely have an eye for photography. Very well done. Just a couple little technical things, really. Work the scene and expose for the highlights when you need to. And really, that's it. Check your focus on hyperfocal distance and stuff like that. Really, I mean, that's all. You have a really great eye for photography, and I really appreciate you sending me in your photographs. And everyone, I appreciate everyone that have sent me in photographs. I am in knee deep in photo critiques. And I got to think of something. I think I'm going to have to make a dedicated section to my website and just have a ton of critiques and do them over the weekend and just do all of them or something. Because there's just too many. There's no way that I could spread them out. I mean, I get 2, 3, 4 in a day. And I'd like to do just 2 a week. So I have a balance of other things on my website. But that's impossible. I'd be within a couple months I'd be 2 years behind on critiques. So I'll figure something out. But I do really appreciate everyone sending them in to me. I appreciate looking at everyone's work. I really enjoy it. And I appreciate everyone going to my website and sending me emails, asking me questions. I appreciate the interest everyone has in photography because I really love photography and I like to try to spread the joy to other people. So I really appreciate everyone visiting the website and watching the videos on YouTube. I just want to say thank you to everyone for that. So, like I mentioned, I'm not really sure how I'm going to be handling critiques, but I'll be doing another one soon, and I'll talk to you guys then.